Between battles, pills, panic, and purpose. The preliminary battles had been fought. The biopsy, the initial diagnosis, those first grueling rounds of treatment. A short, welcome break followed, a ceasefire of sorts, a chance to catch my breath, however shallow. But I knew it wasn't peace. It was just a different phase of the war beginning. I had to adapt to a new daily life, one now structured around ongoing oral chemotherapy. A period I now think of as the long year between battles, filled with its own unique mix of pills, panic, and a slowly dawning purpose. This new chemo regimen settled into a 4-week cycle. For 5 consecutive days each month, I'd take the chemotherapy pills. The nausea and profound tiredness often started right from the first day of taking the pills, and usually continued for a good 8 to 10 days in total every round. Those days were always heavy, a conscious act of swallowing what I knew would make me feel unwell, but what I hoped was also fighting the tumor. It was a relentless cycle, feeling the heaviness descend, enduring the nausea and exhaustion, then slowly, gradually starting to feel a bit more human again, my energy partially returning, only for the calendar to remind me it was almost time for the pre-chemo blood work and the next round. It was a tough rhythm to live by, that constant pattern of feeling bad, then okay-ish, then bad again. The blood work before each cycle remained a huge source of anxiety. My numbers had to be right for the doctor to give me the next chemo dosage. Every time, I'd be on edge, trying my best to stay healthy, hoping my bone marrow was holding up, terrified that low counts would mean a delay. It felt like yet another test I had to pass, a constant pressure. During this long haul, I learned that the side effects weren't just about the immediate aftermath of the pills. My body felt generally weaker, the tiredness was a constant companion, and I realized I was much more susceptible to getting sick. Even a common cold felt like a bigger threat, so I had to be incredibly cautious around people, which sometimes added to a sense of isolation. My bones also seemed to ache more persistently than before. My mobility, while certainly better than when I had both daily radio and chemo together, was still far from what it had been. Everything still seemed to hurt a bit, and movement wasn't always easy. I also noticed subtle changes from the earlier radiotherapy. I was told it could affect things in the long run, and for me, that seemed to manifest as a slight slowing in my cognitive abilities, a kind of mental fog that was frustrating. Perhaps one of the most frightening new challenges during this period was the sudden onset of panic attacks. At first, they were small, confusing episodes. My heart would race, and a sudden, inexplicable dread would wash over me. I didn't understand what was happening. Then, I experienced a truly massive one. It was terrible, completely overwhelming, and it took me a good 4 or 5 days to even begin to feel a bit normal again, to speak clearly, to focus my thoughts. Thankfully, my psychologist was an incredible help here. She trained me how to deal with panic attacks when they came, because, as she explained, they probably would come again. The key, she taught me, was not to force it, not to try and battle the panic head-on, because it would likely always win that fight. Instead, the strategy was to try and relax as much as possible, to breathe deeply and slowly, and to just let the wave pass through me. Afterwards, because they were so utterly tiring and exhausting, the best thing was usually to try and sleep. This understanding, this toolkit, didn't stop the panic attacks entirely, but it gave me a way to navigate them without feeling completely powerless. My emotional state in general during this year felt like a constant series of ups and downs, definitely influenced by the medications I was on. I remember periods of intense anger that felt out of character, or waves of other negative thoughts that were hard to shake. All this time, for nearly 10 months after finishing that initial radiotherapy, the knowledge of an eventual major surgery loomed in the background. It was a distant peak I knew I'd have to climb. Then, the decision was made with my medical team. The surgery was scheduled. Suddenly, that distant peak was right in front of me, just about 6 weeks away. I felt incredibly fortunate at this point to have an amazing neurosurgeon handling my case. He was so confident, so knowledgeable and professional, very decisive, and clearly knew exactly what he was doing. Knowing I was in such capable hands for the upcoming surgery was a huge source of comfort, even as new anxieties began to surface. Those last 6 weeks were different. A strange, almost feverish period. Knowing the surgery was coming brought a new, sharper kind of worry, focused on the procedure itself, the risks, the recovery. But alongside that fear, there was an almost desperate urge to live as fully as possible. I tried to fill each day, to enjoy every small moment, to do things that brought me joy. I actively pushed away thoughts of the surgery, focusing instead on the hope that this would be it, the final big push to get the tumor out of my system. It was a conscious effort to create positive memories, to soak up life, almost as if I was storing up strength and good feelings for the ordeal ahead. The desire to escape the reality of what was coming was strong, but so was the pull to embrace what time I had before everything changed again. It was a flourishing of sorts, a very intense way of being present, all while the shadow of the operating room grew larger. The time between battles is a strange and quiet place. It's where you find a new routine, a new purpose, but you're always aware that the next major challenge is on the horizon. And for me, that challenge had a name, and it had a date on the calendar. Join me this coming Thursday as we prepare for the next chapter, facing surgery and medical treatments. If this story feels important, sharing it with someone who might need it would mean the world. Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss what comes next. And for the complete journey, you can always find the link to the full book in the description below.